Hi there. I'm Emily Guy Birken, and you're listening to Deep Thoughts About Stupid Shit. Because pop culture is still culture, and shouldn't you know what's in your head? Today, I'll be sharing my deep thoughts about Twilight with my sister, Tracie Guy Decker, and with you. Let's dive in.
Have you ever had something you love dismissed because it's just pop culture? What others might deem stupid shit, you know matters. You know it's worth talking and thinking about. And so do we. Come overthink with us as we delve into our deep thoughts about stupid shit.
So, Tracie, tell me what you know about the Twilight Saga and how you know it.
Okay, so I don't know it from reading them or watching the movies because I have done neither.
Which you should put on your tombstone.
But I guess from osmosis and the zeitgeist, here's what I know about the Twilight Saga. It is a love triangle between a human teenage girl, a vampire, and a werewolf. I know that vampires aren't hurt by sunlight, but their skin sparkles, I guess. I know that there is big beef among Twilight fans about whether you're team werewolf or team vampire. I actually don't know their names. And I know that 50 Shades of Grey, which I also have not read nor seen the movie.
That's actually what should go on your tombstone.
Yeah. I know that 50 Shades of Grey was originally fan fiction from Twilight with a global replace for their names. So that's it. That's about what I know about Twilight.
Okay. So that's a reasonable view based on, just kind of picking things up from the zeitgeist. So I was teaching high school English when Twilight first came out, at least once the mania really took over. I can recall hearing little comments about it from as early as my first year of teaching. And I think it was my final year of teaching when I finally read all 4 books. A student loaned me her copies. And I found myself, when reading them, at the time I was 30 or 31 years old. I was a full-grown adult. I was married. I had a real job. I worked with kids, so I very much knew the difference between my teenage self and my adult self. And reading these books made me feel like I was 15 years old again. However, the second I closed the book, and this did not stop me from reading all 4 of them, but the second I closed the book, I was like, oh, this is not good. And I had 2 very strong thoughts at the time, which is one, that I was very grateful that the books had not been around when I was between the ages of about 12 and 15. I would have read them uncritically and taken them in, and they would have become a part of of how I looked at the world in a way that would have been very damaging. And 2, I was very grateful that I did not have a daughter who was that age at the time, because it would have been a situation where I couldn't say, no, you can't read this because everyone is reading it. And even reading it along with her and trying to mitigate some of the damaging lessons from it, I did not think I would be able to break through the way that Meyer writes that is so all-encompassing and so immersive. So I find that Twilight offers some very damaging and regressive lessons on gender politics, relationships, what romance is. And I think that while I know that that has been explored many times, I think that that is something that would be fruitful for us to talk about, and to talk about why it took over so strongly, and what it means for us and for our society. That teenage girls so loved it, as did adult women.
Well, yeah, I mean, based on the way that 50 Shades was received, adult women did too. I was working at the JCC in Virginia Beach when 50 Shades really like took off. And like some of the women that I worked with were like really into it. And like I just read about it and I was like, yep, that is not for me. But they were like really like they were like hot under the collar for this this book, that even in the blurb, like what people were talking about it, I was like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't find anything sexy about the idea of BDSM where a man is dominant. Like I just feel like that's patriarchy, and I live that every friggin' day. Like there's nothing sexy about that, you know?
So the thing with and I'm not proud of this, but I've also read the first book of 50 Shades before I knew what it was. I'm gonna say that. It was suggested to me as like, because I do read romance novels, it was suggested to me on my Kindle as like, you might be interested in this. And like, oh, I've never heard of it. And then like a week later, I hadn't done that. A week later, I heard some of the early rumblings about it. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And I had received a free gift card. So I was like, all right, I'm not even paying for it. The BDSM aspect of like the sex dominance was fine. It was the fact that it is not BDSM that E.L. James was like, knew nothing about the BDSM community, knew nothing about how the actual contracts work between people, knew nothing about what aftercare was, knew nothing about how even if you choose to be in some sort of BDSM relationship as a submissive, you are still in control. And this is entirely a fantasy about male control. And I literally had nightmares about that book after I read it, not based on the Red Room of Pain stuff, which you might have heard about. Like there's a point where he whips her as a sexual thing. It wasn't about that. It was about, he was telling her what to eat and when to eat and what she could wear and what car she could drive, and just overriding her wishes.
And and James is not in this community.
No, like she's not in the scene. She did like when the book came out. The BDSM community was like, this is not what we do. Like, we are very much about consent and everyone understanding and enjoying themselves. And, this is about creating a safe place to play.
Yeah.
And what you are doing is like this is describing abuse.
That's even grosser than I thought.
Oh, it's fucked up.
I don't find I don't think BDSM with a male dominance is sexy. But I don't think it's like, I mean, if other people want to partake, like, cool. Like, cause I understand, I actually have read a little bit about it and all the things that are in place to make sure that a scene is safe, and fully consensual.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Whew, gross. All right.
So,
and that was, we were supposed to be talking about Twilight, but 50 Shades grew out of Twilight. So tell me about, like, how does that happen?
Very good reason that 50 Shades grew out of Twilight. So some of that controlling aspect is very much in Twilight. So the characters are, let's start with the protagonist, Bella Swan, because Pretty McPritterson was not taken. So So Bella Swan, just to give you a little bit of the plot, Bella Swan is a 17-year-old girl who has grown up in Arizona. Her parents are divorced. Her mother has just recently gotten remarried to a professional baseball player who travels for work. And Bella does not want her mother to not be able to be with her stepfather who has to travel, and she has to finish her last 2 years of high school. So she agrees to move to a place called Forks, Washington, which is a real place, to live with her father, who is the chief of police in Forks, Washington. So things are a little awkward just because, she hasn't spent a lot of time with her dad. She gets to Forks, and she has always thought of herself as, plain, and everyone is falling over themselves with how beautiful she is and just wonderful. Stephenie Meyer has talked about how that is something that actually happened to her because she also grew up in Arizona, and then she went to Brigham Young University for college. And she said she was a 5 in Arizona and she was an 8 at Brigham Young. And so I think it is also significant that Stephenie Meyer describes Bella Swan looking exactly the way Stephenie Meyer looks. Long dark brown hair, brown eyes, heart-shaped face, a small chin, lips that are too big for her face. Like, she's describing herself. So I went down a rabbit hole about Mary Sue's and the term and what it means for there to be a self-insert.
So you should do a quick definition for our listeners.
Yes. So the term Mary Sue refers to a self-insert or wish fulfillment into a story. Now, the thing is, there's no set definition for Mary Sue, so it can be very subjective. The term comes from actually Star Trek fan fiction from the 1970s, where a lot of the fan fiction at the time was written by women. And it was often about young adolescent girls who were, Starfleet graduates who, were put on the Enterprise. So there was a woman who was an editor of one of the fanzines who created a story, the name of which escapes me, but where she made her main character literally was named Lieutenant Mary Sue. And she was poking fun at the fact that so many of these stories seemed like wish fulfillments and had, just Captain Kirk is immediately attracted to Mary Sue, and
which actually is in character.
It is
for James Tiberius Kirk.
Yes. And Mr. Spock is just eminently logical about everything she says, things like that. So the issue with the term Mary Sue is that it is used in a very sexist way.
Yeah. I'm thinking that. I mean, Dante Alighieri, anybody? I mean, male authors have been inserting themselves into wish fulfillment into stories for forever.
Yeah, and James Bond is very much a male Mary Sue, which you'll sometimes see a male Mary Sue as a Gary Stu or a Marty Sue. And no one has an issue with that.
Yeah, because, dudes have been doing that for forever, long before 20th century James Bond. Come on, even Dr. Faustus, that it is, that's the way
authors do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
even what's his name? Was it Goethe who wrote the story about himself? And he killed off the character that was him so that he didn't himself have to die by suicide. Yeah. Come on. This is a thing that writers do.
So the joke is, what do you call a male Mary Sue? A protagonist.
Right. Right.
So, however, there is something useful in having a term for this when you have an author who so firmly self-inserts in a wish fulfillment way at the expense of story. And there are kind of, sometimes Mary Sue just means a self-insert. Sometimes Mary Sue is someone who is perfect in every way. Everybody loves them. They have no flaws. They have, they are good at everything as soon as they try it. And Bella Swan fits both of those. And so I think that's also an important understanding of why readers find Twilight so immersive and why people so loved it, is because it was not just the author insert. It very easily becomes the reader insert. So people reading the book imagine themselves as Bella in a way that is very easy to do, in part because Bella doesn't have much in the way of personality.
There's no substance there.
Yeah, there's no substance there. So you can insert yourself very easily.
Yeah. So let's get back to this story. So you started to tell me, so Bella Swan, who moves to Forks, Washington, and realizes she's an 8 when she used to be a 5.
Yes. So she, on her first day of school, she sits next to Edward Cullen, who is one of the kids in school who everyone wonders about. There's like 6 Cullen siblings. They're all adopted and they date each other, which is really freaking weird. Maybe it's 5 Cullen siblings. Anyway. And it turns out it's because they're not siblings. They're a coven of vampires. So Edward is sitting next to her in class.
Wait.
I know.
I'm sorry. Wait. So I'm an immortal being.
Mm-hmm.
Can do whatever I want.
Mm-hmm.
Can walk in the daylight.
Mm-hmm.
And I go to high school?
I know. So that is because, they're in Forks, Washington because of the cloud cover. Like there's very few sunny days, so the problem with the reason why vampires have to avoid the sun is because then people would know what they were, because they sparkle. So
I mean, can't they just say like, I went to a rave last night and it's glitter? I mean, I guess in the 15th century, maybe you couldn't say that, but in the 20th and the 21st century?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll follow. So they're in Forks, Washington.
They're in Forks, Washington.
It's always cloudy.
Where it's always cloudy. So Bella has biology class with Edward. The minute she walks in, he like reacts like with disgust, like she stinks. And like he's like leaning away from her and horrified. And then he disappears from school the next day and is gone for like a couple of weeks. He's described as unbelievably gorgeous. All of the Cullens are, because vampires are all unbelievably gorgeous. He comes back and impossibly saves her from a car that's about to she's in the parking lot of the school, and there's a car that loses control for some reason, and he's all the way across the parking lot and he saves her, like, because he has superhuman speed. So she starts investigating, comes to realize that he is a vampire. She
wait. So this coven of vampires lives in this town and goes to the high school forever.
Well,
but it takes this outsider to be like, something's weird about these people.
They move every few years. So that's the thing. They go back to different high schools over and over and over again. That it makes no logical sense.
All right,
it's only so that Bella has a chance to meet this boy.
Yeah, because
who's 104.
Why else would you? Oh, okay. He's 104.
Yeah. So, she
figures it out.
She figures it out partially because with the help of a new friend named Jacob Black, who is a member of the Quileute tribe, which I believe is how I'm pronouncing it correctly, which is also problematic because Stephanie Meyer did not do any real research.
So is there in fact a nation by that name?
And in that area. So she did enough research to find that there was a nation by that name.
But she didn't actually like research their culture or anything.
Mm-mm.
She was just like, I'm gonna make this guy Native American.
Well, and that's who the werewolves are.
Ew!
And they're played by a white guy in the movies.
Oh, gross. Okay. So Jacob Black.
She also describes his skin as reddish brown in the book.
It's so messed up.
It's not okay.
Okay.
So, turns out every vampire gets some sort of special skill when they turn.
They have like a cutie mark.
Yeah, it's like the vampire cutie mark.
My Little Pony.
So Edward's cutie mark is that he can read minds, except for some reason he can't read Bella's mind. Also, she has the most delicious smelling blood he's ever smelled in his entire life.
Oh, so that's why he was leaning away, so that he wouldn't just like bite her right there.
And you find out that I haven't read it, but she ended up doing a gender swapped version where she told the story of the first one from Edward's point of view, and you find out if you read that he was like, oh my god, I'm gonna like destroy her and kill everyone in this classroom.
Sexy,
because of how good her blood smells. So he is attracted to her for reasons that she has no control over.
And also, like, involve consuming her.
Yes.
Literally.
Yes.
So, talking about objectification. She is food.
Yes. So, over 4 books, there is back and forth. Like, he cannot stay away from her because he loves her so deeply, and she doesn't care. She doesn't care what happens to her. She doesn't care if he kills her. She doesn't care if she wants to be turned into a vampire by him, blah, 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 blah. And he will like try to get away from her for her own good, and then can't help himself, comes back. Finally, he says to her that he will turn her if they get married. So they get married when she's 18 because she refuses to hit 20 before being turned into a vampire.
Because she doesn't want to live as an old lady?
Yeah. Yeah. So, couple of things. She does eventually, they get married. While still vampire and human, they go on a honeymoon. They have sex for the first time. She immediately gets pregnant, which you'd think, like, how does that work? Whatever. So, but vampire human hybrids apparently are a rare thing that can happen. So he wants her to have an abortion. She says, absolutely not. He ends up having to turn her because giving birth kills her. So he turns her to keep her alive. And then she's this, magic special snowflake because every vampire takes like centuries to learn how to not just destroy humans. The Cullens are what they call themselves vegetarians because they only kill animals instead of humans. And so like the first time she goes out to hunt for like a bear or something to drain, like there happens to be a hiker out there, and so she holds her nose and runs the other way. And they're like, how did that work? It took us hundreds of years not to kill people because she's a special snowflake. Yes. So then she names the baby Renesmee, and the baby
Renesmee?
Her mother's name is Renee. Edward's adoptive mother's name is Esme. It's common among Mormon like families to create like kind of weird name hybrids.
Okay.
And so
Renesmee.
Okay. And Jacob, her Gilead friend, who is a werewolf and has been pining for her and has been for the most part a good friend, although he kind of oversteps some consent boundaries himself, immediately imprints on the infant. Because werewolves have something called imprinting, where that's it. You've met the person who is going to be the love of your life. Doesn't happen to the other person, just happens to the werewolf. So he has imprinted upon Renesmee, and that is going to be his wife when she grows up.
Ew.
Now, growing up is because she's a hybrid, she grows faster than a normal human, so she's like,
Wouldn't she grow slower since vampires don't age?
But I think Stephanie Meyer wanted to fast forward through the gross parts of having
the pedophilia.
Well, that too. There's so much wrong with this, but all right.
I still haven't heard where 50 Shades comes from.
Oh, well, 50 Shades was just
I mean, does what's his name? Edward? Does Edward like tell her what to do and stuff?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And he watches her sleep.
Ew.
Without her knowledge. He like sneaks into her room to watch her sleep before they're even dating, before they're
Ew.
Yeah. So
and he's 104 and she's 17?
Mm-hmm.
Like triple ew.
Mm-hmm.
And he like tells her like what to eat and where to go?
Okay, not quite that bad, but yes. So the one,
and she's like, oh, of course, I love you so much, I'll do whatever you say.
No, like I believe that Meyer thinks that she's, and I don't want to undercut this. Meyer feels because she has Bella like pushed back verbally, I think in her mind there is something there that's that modern woman, like, I don't know if she described herself as a feminist, but like that there is something there that she doesn't just submit, but she does. She just whines about it, basically. So now I want to say one thing really to make clear before we move on, because I'm going to be trashing this a lot. A lot of the backlash about Twilight has to do with the fact that it is entirely socially acceptable for us to hate on anything that teenage girls enjoy.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear that the idea of an epic romance is not inherently bad. And there being some sort of epic romance that taps into the same emotional satisfaction that girls found in Twilight, that this is someone who would do anything for you and would sacrifice anything for you. There is something very compelling about that. And that is not what the problem is. That's not what's wrong with this book. The fact that Bella was written as a self-insert is part of the reason why teenage girls latched onto it so much. And I think that if there were a better written, more thoughtful book that had the same kind of sense, that wasn't just this one woman's particular weird fantasy about being controlled, I think that would be a lot healthier. But I don't want this to be about like teenage girls are stupid. I don't want that to be.
Yeah. I hear the distinction. And I think part of the thing that's just hearing you talk about it, that's bothered me about it, is the unequal nature of the relationship. I mean, you cannot, I'm sorry, they're a 17-year-old girl and a 104-year-old man. It's just not. Mm-hmm. It is not a meeting of partners. It is not a meeting of equals. And I don't believe that there can be a true, deep, authentic love story that's about romantic love that is not between equals, or at least close to equals. I believe there could be authentic love between people of different ages, but once you add the romance piece of it, it becomes either just sort of sexual fantasy and use, like using by the authority figure of the younger.
So the thing, as I said, like I mentioned this before we recorded, Stephanie Meyer is not a good writer. In general, I try not to express opinions like that because I am a writer, but she can cry into her millions of dollars. And for one, and for another, like, she just objectively is not. However, her talent is her ability to immerse the reader in a way that just kind of transcends the bad writing. And holy cow, if there was someone who was even just competent writer who could do that. And I don't want to, I mean, it's
like Dan Brown. Like, I feel that way about Dan Brown.
Yeah, Dan Brown is another one. He is very immersive.
Yeah, while I'm reading the Dan Brown work, like, I'm really enjoying it, even as I'm like, what the hell is this?
Yes.
You know, like, like there's an idiom or a thing. I'm like, this is so cliche. Why are you saying it this way?
Like a symbology. Really there's no such thing as symbology. Like, why are you making things up? So yes. He's another one who's like that there. And I think like page turner books tend to be very immersive, and anyone who is capable of the immersion, who also has a really good grasp on storytelling and language, that would just be like the book of all time.
Yeah. Like, even my beloved Anne McCaffrey, she's a great storyteller. Mm-hmm. And the immersion is there. And like, when I read it now as an adult, mm-hmm. like, I'm not actually that great a writer.
Yeah. So the moment that took me out, where I was a 30-year-old person reading it again, and I was like, that is not okay, was, and I cannot tell you which book it was in because it's been so many years since I read it, but there's a point where Bella has a pickup truck that her father got her, so she has wheels, she can drive herself, and so she wants to go see Jacob because he's her friend. I can't remember like the plot details of this is before or after she learns he's a vampire or a werewolf. He doesn't know when they first meet. He doesn't know what's going to happen to him or anything like that because the tribe keeps it secret because they don't know who's going to turn into anyway. But the vampires and the werewolves are like mortal enemies. And so they like,
of course they are.
Yeah. And so, and then of course there's the love triangle as well. So they're, because Edward disapproves of her going to see Jacob, he disables her car. He just takes a wire out, something like that. And, she goes to get in the car and he's like, hey, you can, I disabled the engine. And she's like, what are you talking about? Fix it. He's like, no, I'll do that before you have to go to school tomorrow. But no, you can't, you can't go to see Jacob. And she just kind of like, and like stomps back into the house and is pissed off. And, that was when I was like, there is no universe in which that is okay.
Does this child have any female friends whatsoever?
Sort of.
Her mom is absent with the baseball playing stepfather.
Yeah, and her dad.
Does she have a stepmother?
No, her dad's single. Her dad can't stand Edward. She has some friends, but that's another part of the Mary Sue thing is like,
does it pass the Bechdel test?
Oh God, no, not at all.
So, sorry, footnote for those listening, the Bechdel test from Alison Bechdel. Are there at least two female characters? Do they both have names? Do they talk to one another about something other than boys?
Yeah. So
it's a really low bar.
And it like, honestly, in 4 books, there might be like, she might talk to a teacher about an assignment, but like, that would be the extent of it. And she talks to like some of the human high school friends about like a dance coming up, but I still count that as basically being about a man or a boy.
Right.
You know?
And do they even have names?
Yeah. Well, they do. I mean, she's like, she's got a friend named Angela, but like, they don't matter. They don't matter. So I can remember our cousin came for Thanksgiving at our house in 2009, I think, and she had seen the movie or something like that, and she was talking to me a little bit about Twilight. She's like, "It's a chastity parable, isn't it?" I was like, "Oh yeah, it's a total chastity parable," because Edward's reaction to Bella is all about like, bloodlust.
Yeah, desire. Uh-huh.
And his ability to hold back is considered to be like a huge sacrifice on his part.
Yeah, right. And noble.
When I was reading it, there were all the other, many of the other English teachers in the department where I worked had already read it. There was one, it was a woman who's about my age. She said to me, she's like, "Oh, you're going to go home and tell your husband you're not good enough for me anymore. I need an Edward." Like, as I started reading, I was like, what? And then I overheard another member of our department talking to, I think, that same person, but the other member, she's like, "What I love about this is that there's no sexual activity until they get married." And I'm like, what? What? So it's a chastity parable. It's about the importance of saving yourself for marriage. The thing is, it does not give the girls reading it any kind of blueprint. Like, okay, let's take as a given that it's a good idea to teach teenagers to save themselves.
I'm not sure it is, actually.
I'm not taking that as like, that's the thing. I'm not actually taking that as a given, but let's just take that as a given.
All right.
So I'm not saying that's a given, but
all right, let's follow it for a minute.
Let's start with that. Let's follow that thread. So you are telling girls, you need to save yourselves for marriage, for forever. And so what you give them is a story about how he keeps saying, no, not till we're married. So you're not actually giving girls any kind of blueprint for how to handle it when you're feeling pressured, which feels to me like much more likely. And while I suspect that, my coworker and Stephanie Meyer herself would say, like, well, we're teaching girls that they should wait for a guy who acts like this. Like, that still doesn't help in the moment. So, I mean, like, just even taking that as a given, which I don't. But, even if that's what you're trying to do, even if you're trying to tell a chastity parable, it is a lousy chastity parable because it does nothing to help girls handle, if you really loved me, you would, or any of the other types of pressure that young boys might put on them or anyone might put on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In particular, so I just recently read Untangled, which is about the the psychological development of adolescent girls. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that this psychologist talks about is that the pressure that girls receive, and that because of the way that our society treats like intercourse, like all the way, like that is the thing that's off limits. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of these girls ends up doing things they don't want to do, that are not fun for them, that give them bad reputations, that are short of actual intercourse. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so these girls end up like pressured into performing oral sex or doing other things that they don't want to be doing. Mm-hmm. They don't enjoy doing, but they don't have a way out of it because they haven't been taught that their bodies are their own and that their pleasure matters. Mm-hmm. They mm-hmm. haven't been taught that whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And so to your point, the what is most likely is, given this model, is that they'll think they have an Edward who's like, well, just go down on me until we get married. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how is that okay? Yeah. That's not okay. Yeah. That is not okay. And I'm not saying oral sex is not okay, but that particular like arrangement, yeah, like you go down on me because I need it. Mm-hmm. And then whatever. I don't care what happens. Yeah. I don't care if you have pleasure. Yeah. Yeah. It also, like, if we dig even deeper into like what it is, like, yes, you're right about like this, the damage of saving themselves, but also the idea that sexual intercourse is in and of itself pleasurable for women. And that is like, there's no, like the old joke about how the men can't find the cathedral. Yes. Yes. And like, this is why. Mm-hmm. Like these kinds of stories mm-hmm. are mm-hmm. why.
And over and over again, because this is written the books are written in first person from Bella's point of view, over and over again. So when she realizes that he's a vampire and that he might kill her, her immediate reaction is like, it doesn't matter. I need to be close to him. And over again, like he tells her, like, he's got some self-loathing because he used to murder people. And she's like, it doesn't matter. I have to be close to you. And so, like,
ooh, if that isn't what abused women say.
yes. And the fact that she subsumes any of her own desires. Now, the thing is, we also don't know what her desires are. She doesn't have any interest in going to college. She doesn't really have any hobbies. She like cooks for her dad because she feels like that's her duty. She talks about liking to read, and Stephanie Meyer does this thing where she has like, she shoehorns in a classic work of literature like Romeo and Juliet, or what was the other one she did? I don't remember. As a like metaphor within it, and it's what Bella's reading in school. You never see her like thinking about what she's reading
for pleasure,
or reading for pleasure or anything like that. So like part of it is like, you know, she gives up all of like her life for this, but there is no life to give up. Because there is no internal life that she has other than thinking like, oh, I'm so clumsy and nobody likes me. So I also want to touch on, and because I don't want this to, because I could go for hours. This is a rich text, Tracie. But I would like to touch on the belief system that Stephanie Meyer is adhering to, that I can't tell if she knows or not that she's written it into this book. So Stephanie Meyer to me is very clearly deeply terrified of death. And I'm basing that partially on Twilight and then partially on, she has a standalone book called The Host, which I think we should do another, because I've got a whole other hour on that. The Host, I think more than Twilight makes it clear, because The Host actually would have been a good book if she'd let the protagonist die at the end. Mm-hmm. If she'd let the protagonist die at the end, that would have actually been like a very satisfying book. It would have been great. But her deep fear that I see of death would not let her do that to her protagonist. With Twilight, there's some stuff. I was not aware of this when I read it. I'm still not super clear on details because I don't really know a whole heck of a lot about Church of Latter-day Saints or Mormonism. I think it's not okay to call it Mormonism anymore, but anyway. But some of the things that they talk about is that if you are a Mormon, if you are sealed in the temple with another Mormon, when you die, you basically live forever with your family in like a new universe you create or something like that. And so to me, it's pretty clear that the vampires are kind of like Mormons. There's also from The Host, it's clear to me that there's some ambivalence that Stephanie Meyer has. And again, I feel weird about doing this. It's like the Goldwater rule. Like I don't have any, I don't have any standing to like be digging around in her psyche, but this is just what I can read as a complete stranger. She sees a lot of good coming from Mormonism and like this creation of this family. And again, in The Host, there's aspects of it. But she also seems to be very conflicted about the violence that comes from it as well. The complete overtaking of a personality. And so for her, like having Bella go from human to Mormon and then have a baby is kind of like, seems to me her way of finding some meaning and beauty in something that has been abusive to her. Just based on the little I know about, not that I want to say all Church of Latter-day Saints is abusive, but there are very abusive beliefs built into it, like that men are the ones who get, I don't remember exactly what it was, but they at age 12 they become something and then they can perform miracles and but that doesn't happen to the girls. Girls are not expected to get an education. They're expected to marry young, have kids quickly, have lots of kids. So, that's kind of an inherently abusive system. Mm. So, it is interesting to me that there is so much within this, so much like conservative and heteronormative expectations based on, you know, who Bella is expected to be and what she considers romantic. And I think that speaks very much to someone who grew up in a very controlling kind of religion. Again, I don't want to overstate my opinion of any particular religion, but just based on, you know, the fact that only some people can go in the temple and only some people are sealed and all of that. And if you leave the religion, there is like some pretty serious repercussions. That to me sounds pretty controlling. The other thing that gets me about this book, and the reason why I'm bothered by it, is that I feel like she's written a handbook for abusers. So like if someone reads this, and actually this happened when I was teaching, I had free reading, you know, kids could pick any book they wanted to read. And one of the boys in my class, and for a nice reason, like he was like, I want to know what all the girls are excited about. And so he read Twilight. And he was one of my kids who was like really charming, really good looking, really like I can't remember if he had a girlfriend or if he dated a bunch of different girls, but like girls were always interested in him. And I remember thinking like, this is a little worrisome that he's going to read this. Like he was a very good kid. Like I don't think he was going to do anything wrong intentionally. But at the same time, this is like a handbook for like, you know, how to control, how to gaslight, how to abuse, how to neg. Like, because that's the other thing. Edward is constantly being like, oh, you know, you are such a disaster and things like that to her, because he's always having to rescue her. So I worry about the long-term repercussions of those books on an entire generation of young girls. And I also wonder about like my colleagues who are like, oh my God, it's so romantic. And I'm like, when that first happened, when I was teaching, my thought was like, okay, they're reacting to how immersive it is. And there was something magical about being a teenager again. You know, there was something a little bit, I mean, magical is the only word I can use to describe it. Like, you know, because it was the good parts of being a teenager, like you felt the angst, but you got the release because he chose you, and both he's chose you. Like, so there was something about that. But then to be able to close the book and still say like, you're gonna think your husband's not good enough for you because you deserve an Edward. No, I do not want a man who knows what's best for me. I do not want a man who decides that he can disable my car so I can't go somewhere that he disapproves of. And
I suspect. No, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just thinking that I'm having not read it, so I only have what you've just shared. But that sort of romanticized, like, he just lusts after me and is so noble that he's controlling himself. It's more that, I would think. Although James, E.L. James, that's her name, right? Who wrote, you know, it was the control that she was, and you know, there's getting hot over.
The other thing that, I mean, so there's a point where Bella goes into, I think Seattle, I don't remember, but relatively big city if it's not Seattle, to go to a bookstore to get something more about, you know, vampire lore, and she parks in an area of town that apparently turns out to be dangerous, and she's being menaced. And Edward comes and rescues her. She had no idea he was there. He followed her to make sure she was okay.
Oh, that's creepy.
So, and that's the sort of thing that I don't understand why it seems to be such a common fantasy of like, oh, he'll swoop in and rescue me. And I'm like, why?
Ugh.
Why do you want that? What is exciting about that? I don't get it.
Also, as a resident of Baltimore,
Yeah.
parked in a bad part of town and was being menaced. Give me a friggin' break.
Yeah.
That's just straight up white racism.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, it was white guys who were menacing her, but but it had it was another one of those oh, she's pretty kind of thing.
She can handle it.
I know.
I mean, I don't know.
That's
such a more interesting story to me, is the 17-year-old who's which is maybe why Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which maybe we'll get to one day, just the concept. I'm not even talking about, but the concept that Joss Whedon was I want the cheerleader who actually takes care of her own self,
well, and that's, you never, the most interesting thing that Bella ever does is in the second book. Edward tells her he's leaving her forever because she's in too much danger. And she, and actually the way that Meyer writes it is that happens in the first chapter. And then, and it's September. Here's the thing that I wish I didn't know. Bella shares a birthday with my youngest son, and I will never not know that. Anyway, so it's right after her birthday. He leaves forever. And so, and it's a September birthday. And so the next page is October, and the next page is November, and the next page is January, and the next page is February. And it's basically showing that she shut down. She is just going through the motions, not really living. And in February, I think it is, her father finally says, "This is enough." So she discovers that when she is in danger, she hallucinates Edward's voice. So she starts riding motorcycles. And that's the most interesting thing about her, is she learns how to ride motorcycles. And she has Jacob, because he works on motorcycles and cars and stuff like that. And he has a motorcycle. She has him teach her how to ride. And it is the most interesting thing about her, but she's only doing it
so she can hear his voice.
So she can hear his voice.
That's messed up.
And so,
all right.
As I said, this is a rich text. There is so much.
We've been talking for a long time now. So we have had some seriously deep thoughts about some seriously stupid shit. So I want to synthesize maybe.
Okay.
All right. So Twilight. Now I know. Chastity Parable.
Mm-hmm.
Messed up vision of romance and gender dynamics. Messed up and very classic. Mary Sue insertion in the worst kind of way. Mm-hmm. But not because teenage girls like it.
Not because teenage girls like it. And there is something that teenage girls need, an emotional need that we need to be better about filling. As a society and as creators, to find a way to help them feel seen and loved and recognized.
And so let's teach them to take care of themselves and stand up for themselves and find romantic partners who are partners.
Yes. And who are impressed by them.
Yeah.
And not just think they're hot and wonder what they're thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Whew. All right. So, that was fun. So next time I'm hoping to tell you my deep thoughts about Muppets from Space.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm excited.
All right. See you next time.
See you next time, Tracie.
Thanks for listening. Our theme music is Professor Umlaut by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com. Find full music credits in the show notes. Deep Thoughts is a labor of love, but that doesn't make it free to produce. You can help keep us overthinking. Support us through our Patreon with a link in the show notes. Leave a positive review so others can find us. And share the show with your people. Until next time, remember, pop culture is still culture.
And shouldn't you know what's in your head?